I am back. I took a bit of a break from the YouTubes because I had my off season, so I basically had 3 weeks basically not riding a bike. Say basically because I did go for a few bike rides with friends to cafes, which was really nice. So I had 3 weeks of an off season, and for a week of that I was actually abroad in South Africa. Saw lots of animals. I think I saw, I'm gonna say all of the big five. Oh, I didn't see a lion. I saw 4 of the big 5. And yeah, so I thought I'd do this video to kind of like, basically I've had quite a few people like asking me about like finances and stuff, and I'm the kind of person that's like, I'm quite transparent. I'm happy to be transparent about finances. Maybe not all my personal finances and like log into my bank account, but like I'm pretty happy to be pretty open about like if I'm making money out of gravel racing, or like how much money if I'm making money. Because I think for like young athletes, one aspiring to do what I'm doing, they kind of need to know what they're getting themselves into. But also from like a viewer perspective, I don't think it's fair if I paint this image that like I'm rolling in cash when I'm not rolling in cash. Anyways, so I did some calculations. I got back on the old Excel, which I obviously needed to use back in my finance days. And I did some calculations. I thought it would just be really helpful to kind of run through overall, roughly, like, did I make money? And then like how much a season of gravel racing cost me, especially with all the international travel. Before I run into the actual figures at hand, I do want to say that there's obviously a few things that have like influenced it that aren't taken into account. So for example, I obviously got quite a lot of like sponsorship in the form of product, or it's, people call it value, what do they call it? Value in kind sponsorship. So like, for example, obviously I've been given my bikes to race this year. I've been given nutrition support. I've been given wheels. I've been given tires. So there's a lot of things in terms of expenses that won't be there because I just didn't have them as expenses, which is amazing. And I'm like so thankful to my sponsors for that.
Giro also sponsored my mechanic, so I didn't have the cost of any mechanical work on my bikes, which was incredible.
The other kind of, I want to call it small writing, small print, is, for example, Unbound. So Unbound is kind of a separate race that I was taken to Unbound with Ribble. So within my expenses, I don't account for Unbound at all. And similarly, that obviously would have been some sort of sponsorship from Ribble, but that's not kind of counted in terms of my finances, in terms of income. So Unbound was completely separate from everything else. Separate trip, went with the Ribble Collective. Amazing trip, despite the mud. The other thing is, and you will see this in the income, is the Bank of Dad. My dad came to a couple of races and we like stayed together, and he said that he'd be happy to pay for the accommodation in those cases. So with those cases, I've classed my share as expenses, but then I've classed an income as Bank of Dad to kind of counteract that. So I'm not kind of deflating how much the race season cost me because my dad paid for a couple of the places I stayed at. Thank you so much, Dad. Joe Nutt, you're a legend. But also, I'm not then discounting the fact that my dad did help me, so I'm including income, Bank of Joe Nutt. The numbers at hand. So total expenses was just over £17,000 for the year. That was probably more than I anticipated, and that would be down to things like insurance actually costing a fair deal, as well as bike parts. I did buy a power pedal for my gravel bike. That's a fifth of that expense.
I also didn't have a saddle or a shoe sponsor, so those came into that expense also.
I think race costs coming to close to 10 grand probably doesn't surprise people given where I went and the travel I did this year. Like, it was a pretty expensive year because I went to so many different continents. So it does make sense. I did race, I think I raced in 13 different countries. It's interesting that actually like 20% of my race costs came down to race entries, which I actually think is pretty crazy. Having to pay for a race entry is quite a lot for a pro athlete, and it really does add up. Like, the fact that I spent nearly 2 grand on race entries this year is pretty crazy. That is pretty crazy. Gravel races are expensive. And that is, some races did have me without charging me an entry, so that's not every race that I did this year. Coming into income, and did I make a profit this year? Short answer, I did not make a profit this year. I made a £5,331.65 loss, which is just cycling. So I have done some part-time freelance work alongside cycling. But yeah, just looking at cycling side of things, I did make a loss. Actually, interestingly, I watched a similar video, which is kind of what inspired this, and I had a few people say, oh, watch this video, maybe you should do something similar, with triathlon, where like the profit was like so much better. And I was thinking about like, what is the difference there? Gravel racing is a bit niche, so I would say that there's probably going to be less money in it due to its niche nature. But actually, I think it comes down to the way that triathlon's set up with prize money. So if we look at the income section, I actually took, so just short £10,000 in total from sponsorship, but then prize money was only £125, which is like, I don't want to be quite strong about this and say like menial, but like it's nothing. So I won that in Battle of the Beach in Wales, which isn't like the biggest international gravel race, but they did have prize money for athletes, and I came third. And yeah, that really shocked me thinking about it. Like I'd say that there were some races this year where I did expect to earn money and I didn't earn any money. Gravel doesn't have the prize money that other sports do.
Just to add in here, it wasn't also like we were getting prizes that were worth money. There weren't really prizes at all. Like one time I won a can of beer.
And like the comparison in triathlon would be thousands of pounds.
And I don't even drink.
Gravel's quite a new sport, so maybe that's something where it develops, and I can see like already the Gravel Earth series next year is talking about having prize money. So it is something that's potentially improving. But yeah, having to like pay for race entries and then not earning any money is quite surprising, or at least I found it quite surprising. I don't race my bike to earn a lot of money. Like that's not why I'm doing this. I've chosen to race my bike for very little money, if not negative monies, because I absolutely love doing it, and I love the lifestyle of being like I'm going to say a semi-professional athlete, because I do have to do some freelance work. I would love the lifestyle of being a professional athlete. I have chosen this, so making a loss was like a bit of a shame, because I was hoping to kind of prove to myself that this was sustainable, and I really want to keep doing this for several years. Like I want to keep doing this until I'm not enjoying it anymore, or I'm not getting that same thrill. Really, really keen to keep racing and make this something sustainable, and at the moment it's not sustainable, and that's why I kind of decided to like crunch the numbers on the old spreadsheet, because I want to see that it's sustainable. But I'm hoping next year I do not make a loss. That's my target for next year, is to make at least a few grand profit, because then I can cut down on the freelance work a little bit. But yeah, kind of moral of the story is, at the moment in gravel racing, it is not very easy to make money. I actually think there's more money in America. So from talking to people, it seems like people are on salaries over in America to race their bikes. I'll be releasing kind of information about what I'm doing for 2024, any new sponsors that I'm signing with. At the moment, I'm kind of having those conversations, deciding what I'm doing, looking at my calendar. And yeah, I am really, really excited. I think I'm going to commit to another 2 years for certain of this. And then beyond that, I'm going to have to crunch my spreadsheet and say, have I actually gone so much into my savings that I can't do this any longer? Unless there's a huge change from this year. But I'm thinking the only way is up, unless I get a lot worse at racing my bike. I absolutely love gravel racing. I want to keep doing it. I will keep doing it for 2 years, maybe more, if I can start to earn some money from it. But yeah, 2023, net loss.
There we go. Now you see how much further